Aio ki te rangi, eo ki te whenua, aroha ki te au, waiaraha ki te aorangi. Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai. Ki tau te rangimarie kia koutou. Peace to the heavens, peace to the earth, love to the world, compassion to the universe. Peace be with you all. Nau mai, haere mai to our very dear Councillor Anne Redstone. She will always be a councillor. Let's give her a big round of applause and welcome her today. And a very warm welcome to Councillor Geraldine Travis. It's wonderful to have you back in the chamber too, Geraldine. To Andrea, to Matt and Hannah, very warm welcome, Anne's friends and representatives in our chamber today, as we want to acknowledge you and your what you did for our council, for our community over the past many years. Can I acknowledge also our staff Waiata group? Lovely to see you all here. We look forward to the Waiata after Charles gives our opening karakia. Could I invite you forward now, Charles, to give our opening karakia, and look forward to the beautiful Waiata groups performing today.
E te atua e te ari ki haere mai koe tirohia tēnei whare. God of love and compassion, turn your eyes on this house at the opening of this council meeting. We acknowledge those citizens of our district of Heretaunga Hastings who have died. May they rest in peace. We give thanks for the privilege of civic leadership, and we ask that you shine your light on the councillors and the mayor that have gathered here today to make important decisions for Heretaunga Hastings, that they may confront the challenges ahead of them, that they may consider within themselves the decisions that need to be made today for the benefit of our district of Heretaunga Hastings. Nō reira e te ariki, āwhinatia maira kia te huri atu ai o mātou whakaro ki a koe ki te kaihango o ngā mea katoa. Mā tō mātou ariki mahehu karaiti. Āmini.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Charles. Thank you for that beautiful Waiata. And can I also acknowledge Harono, who is our tuia with us today, who you'll see in your agenda item, who will speak to us later on about her journey as a tuia. So it's wonderful to have you. This is your first time in the chamber, so lovely to have you with us today. We have leave of absence from Councillor Lawson and Councillor Butto. Any further requests for leave of absence? And as you know, Councillor Apatu.
I'd like to request a leave of absence between the 10th and the 17th of August, please.
Can you take a note of that for me, Caitlin, and follow up with an email? Thank you, Councillor Apatu. Councillor Heke.
Kia ora, Your Worship. I'd like to seek absence on the 6th and 7th of June and the June the 23rd through to the 28th.
Okay, thank you. If you could just send an email. Thank you, Councillor Heke. I'll come back to you on those leave of absence. Happy to receive them today and happy to move from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sholem. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Now, we have the confirmation of minutes from the 14th of March, and they have been previously circulated. The motion is that the minutes of the council meeting held on Thursday, the 14th of March, be confirmed as an accurate record. Any changes, corrections to those minutes? Anybody wish to move those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Second, and Councillor Dixon. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. And we are taking, we're going to go a bit out of order because the Mayor loves to do that, doesn't like to follow the script all the time. So we are going to have now the presentation to Councillor Anne Redstone, and we'd like to invite you to come forward, and thank you. Now, this is a very, very special day for us all, and all of us who served with Anne have incredible memories of our time together. Your certificate says, "We express our sincere appreciation for your dedicated service to our community of Heretaunga Hastings as an elected councillor from 2016 to 2024. Don't get me started. You know I'm the biggest crybaby. As a councillor representing the Heretaunga ward, your hard work, your passion, your commitment has made a significant difference to the well-being of our environment and our people. And over the back. Anne is a well-respected councillor who has served the people of the Hastings district for 8 years. Her leadership as chair of the Environmental Resilience Committee, All-Maranui Refuge Landfill Joint Committee, Joint Waste Futures Project Steering Committee, and voice on environmental matters across council and projects has been invaluable. Anne has advocated passionately for the needs and aspirations of all Heretaunga ward communities. We express our sincere appreciation for her dedicated service to the Hastings district and our council. And on behalf of us all, we present you with this. We wish you all the best for your health and well-being, and we just have loved having you with us. And I'll just say a couple more words. When I sat and reflected this morning and thought about our Anne and her Facebook, and we've all got a story about the Facebook, because we would see that the community had this incredible engagement with Anne as a councillor. And as soon as a query came through, next thing the Facebook message would be through to the council, and it would be actioned and followed up, and emails, and you know, you were incredible the way you represented your community on every matter, whether it was stormwater, whether it was coastal hazards and coastal inundation, and whether it was regulations to move the house and move the alterations high. We had all sorts of issues to deal with, environmental issues, and you set us on a path, Anne, and you didn't let us divert from that path. And that path is our environmental well-being, the changes to climate and how we must adapt and we must adjust. And you kept us focused on that. We're not going to, your committee is sitting and waiting. We're seeing what happens in the future. But everybody is very committed to the economic and the environmental well-being of everything that you have set us up strongly to carry on with. And when I think about my time serving with Anne, Anne got used to get the prize. Elwyn's sort of taken over it now as attending the most events as a councillor. Didn't matter where the event was across Heretaunga Hastings, Anne was always there. From the senior housing garden competition, always the only councillor who would come with me to all the senior housing to check out the gardens and acknowledge the people for their hard work. She was always there supporting. She went well above and beyond all her normal work as a governor sitting at this table. She was a strong advocate for our seniors and our social housing. She had big concerns about financial well-being of all of our tenants across our social housing. And she always made her views, presented them articulately and clear about what her thoughts were in terms of how we care for our seniors. We know that her work will never stop. Her Facebook won't stop and she won't stop. And I was able to update her the other day on what is going on in one of the areas of her district. And we know that she's going to always be an advocate for her community. She started 30 years ago, I think you told me, 40 years ago. So, you know, she needs to be well recognised. This is just a small token of our acknowledgement and our appreciation for your outstanding, Mahi Ann. You're a true legend. One thing I didn't mention, it wasn't on my list, but when we had the very, very big efforts to make sure we had a Takitimu Māori ward, and everybody had to work, and we all had to get together and make sure that our community understood the value and importance and relevance of a Māori ward. And I remember you ringing me up one night and said, I've gone out to the Tai Whenua, I'm telling everybody what's going on, and I can't be there. And that's how determined she was. She wanted to make sure that everybody knew the relevance, the importance, and of us having a Māori ward. So, you know, those are the memories that I have. She came into the chamber and the staff said to her, sorry, Anne, you can't be at this meeting because you're going to be part of the decision-making unit, you have to go home. So, you know, she tried and she just kept doing it and she did what was right. And she always does what is right. So, Anne, we acknowledge you today. We thank you. You are an absolute legend for us in our community. You have been a friend to me. You've been an advisor when we've got all our stars unaligned and we get a whole lot of crazy issues going on. And you're always there at the end of the phone to support me, and I thank you for that. Oh, darling. I don't want to kiss you because I've got a cold. So I'll hold the flowers. Yes.
Thank you for your kind words, they're very humbling. Tēnā koutou katoa. I feel very honoured and humbled. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege working alongside all of you and serving the people of the Hastings district. While there have been some challenging times over the past 3 trienniums, the Havelock North water contamination, COVID and Cyclone Gabriel, to name a few, this job is definitely the best I've ever had, and I've had a lot. I've met some really amazing people, made good friends and learned a great deal over the past 7 years. My passion is all around the environment, as Sandra said, and I've felt truly privileged to hold the environmental portfolio for 4 years. My heart's desire is the work we started is embedded in everything we do. Given high priority, excuse my voice, it's part of one of my symptoms. Given high priority and continues to progress with speed in order to ensure a better future for our tamariki and mokopuna. I'd like to thank my friends and family for their unwavering support. I'd also like to acknowledge everyone around this table for the work they do and the hard decisions they need to make to keep our lives as safe and comfortable as possible at the least cost. I will miss you all. Kia ora.
I see our ambassador has arrived. Would you like to come forward, Ambassador? I think there's just one thing before, I know that our Hastings ambassador may like to say a few words, and anybody else may as well, and you're very free and welcome to do that. But there's one part that I missed, that, and while we've got Councillor Travis here today, that Anne and Geraldine strongly drove the protection of Te Mata. And we had that eastern escarpment, that eastern face of Te Mata Peak, and we had, and it wasn't in your words and it wasn't in mine, and Nigel's just reminded me of it, how difficult that was after the Craigie Range track debacle, and how we had to change. And we had to have plan change 4 to make sure that we did that. And Geraldine, I acknowledge you and Anne, who were absolutely driven that work with Elwyn. So we could make sure we did that. We can be very proud that we can drive out to Waimarama and see the result of that. And I know, Anne, it was very difficult for you because you wanted no dwellings on that land. Just remember, we remember it, no dwellings, but we had to compromise and negotiate and find a way to protect it. So that is something that is very dear to us as well. Thank you, Anne. Yes.
To be here to support my dear friend. There's many things I can say about her, talk about her skill set, her passion, her commitment, her endurance, her resilience. We could rattle those off. They're all cliches, but they're true in this case. But what impressed me most about this precious friend of mine is her integrity, her humility, her love, her compassion, her honesty, and her inclination to build bridges between relationships, even with people that may not have built a bridge back. But she's a very forgiving soul. She's a very loving and caring soul. And it's just an absolute privilege to know you, my friend.
Thank you.
It really is. So that's why I'm here. I mean, often around the council table, we're put under pressure. And I walked through some of it on my way here, and you got time frames, the need is out here, and the resources are here. You got to juggle all that, and then often when the public come into the chamber, they give you your pedigree. They give you your pedigree, and it doesn't always caress your ear ever so kindly, but actually it was my favourite time in the chamber. But in and amongst all of that, the KPIs, the outputs, the bureaucracy. That's what underpins the whole thing. Love, and compassion, and integrity, and humility. That underpins everything we do in our lives. I'm certainly not a perfect model of all of that. I'm a mere mortal after all. But that's what impresses me most about you, Anne. It really is. And whether you're in here or out there, you never change. You're consistent. I just wish you all the best with your health. I love you, mate. I love you. Yeah. So thank you for the privilege of being here. Bless you, everybody. In my 15 years here, I can honestly say I loved it. I loved every minute. Yeah. So bless you. God bless you, everybody. To everybody I haven't seen for quite some time. Great to see you all.
Thank you, Henare, and I'd like to say that you're the reason I bought the love, because I thought that was sitting at the table already and you needed support, particularly with the councils before I started. There was a couple of strong teams and they were opposing, so I thought I would bring the love to council and try and join forces with everyone and have made some fantastic friends because of that. Beautiful. So thank you, Henare. It was up to you too.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne. It's lovely to have you with us. Our other councillor, Councillor Renata Nepi, has just had birth, he and his wife given birth to a beautiful new daughter, And yes, only just yesterday. So we're going to have our separate ceremony for Renata, Councillor Nepi, in the future when he's able to come in and join us. So he couldn't be with us with Anne today, but hopefully as we bring on our new Takatimu Ward councillor and farewell and thank Councillor Nepi in the future. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. A message for Anne. Anne, you have been a councillor that every council needs. You're passionate, you're dedicated, you're reliable, you're well-grounded, and you're always involved. Didn't matter what it was, you were involved. You're passionate about the environment and the coast, but you're also well-grounded about everything else you're involved in and the wide range of council activities. You went way beyond the call of duty. You attended every meeting you possibly could. Your community knew that they could rely on you, and that's the most important thing about being a councillor, that your community can rely on you. I really appreciated your support as a zone councillor, a fellow councillor on the Museum Storage Committee, what else? The Joint Working Group and Coastal Hazards. Best wishes for all your future endeavours and enjoy all the pleasures of life while you can. Don't waste them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, fellow councillor and colleague on the phone every day to each other as a double act and a great team together, Councillor Elwyn Corbyn.
Thank you, Your Worship. You've just about said everything I was going to say. And you've been an awesome community advocate and an awesome councillor. As the Mayor said, you're compassionate, dedicated, you act with conviction, and you've been available 24/7 for your community. And your community knows that, and have high regard and respect for you for that. On a personal note, I want to thank you for taking me under your wing when I first came on council, showing me the ropes, given me an introduction to the ward, the issues, the personalities, the relationships. I've enjoyed being part of your A team and have missed those phone calls over the last 3 months. It was good to have a sounding board to the fat and actually get some context and perspective into whatever issue we were discussing. So I want to thank you for that and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Well, Councillor Hickey.
Ka tū ka mihi, kia koe he tai, hei whakatūwhera tia nei, tani whakahiringa. O ho tau te whānau ko tai mai nei, hei tautoko a tēnei mā reikura. A tēnei mā reikura, hei tiaki a tātou nei tai ao, a tātou nei whenua, mō na hoki. Nā reira, e te mā reikura e ui ana hoki, ka tū ka mihi. A mai tātou nei kauni, kai kauni hira, e tuke mihi kia koe. I te waka noho mā taua, kei reira, kei te kōrero wānanga, e pāna ki a tātou nei kaupapa, tā reire mi ana hoki, kia koe mō tō tiaki ki au. Ki tō taha, te taiohi tonu o te rangatahi tonu a Renata, e tuku e mihi kia koe anō. Nā reira, e te kuini, mai tāku nā kau kia koe, e mihi ana hoki kia koe. And your term with us isn't finished. There's a saying, ka pū te ruha ka hao te rangatai, out with the old nets in with the new. And kua tai mai nei, harona, harono, hei tautoko tēnei kaupapa. But rest assured, those nets know where the fish is. So don't go too far because your skills and attribute to pūkinga, whiako, or your experiences that you have, should only be just a phone call or a text or email away. Nā reira, I appreciate the time that I spend next to you, even though I got in trouble for talking a lot. And I was told up by the Poromatua. I think it's only right that I thank you for what you do. Your iwi thanks you for your time at the table. And now it's time for the next generation to take its place. Nā reira, a ka tū anō ka mihi ki a tātou nei rangatira renata, a ha kokori ia I konei a tinana, kei konei a wairua pē, ka titiru ki runga nā pukamata pēr. E mi ana hui ki a koe e te rangatira. Mo tō mahi a koe ti he pauna. Nā reira, e tohu tērā ina nahi ka whānau mai tō pēpi nā reira, e mi ana hoki ki a koe e te rangatira, aha ko te aha. Even though Renata may not be, Councillor Renata Nepi may not be here in person, I'm sure he's watching on live our way to us spiritually, and that the signs have said how fortunate is it yesterday that he and his wife have another baby. And so this is only the rightful thing to do for a councillor to support his wife in regards to the next generation and what we're talking about. So, koutou mā, koutou mai nei ki tēnei rangi whakahirahira. For those of you who have gathered for this auspicious occasion, engari, timing is everything, isn't it? When you walked in that room, a room lit up with your joy, like Anne said. Nā reira, a tamihi, tēnā kapai. O ringa ringa, e tarono, ki waha hoki mai. Tika tonu, hue! Tika tonu, hue! Tika tonu atu ki a koe, hiki nei koe aku whakaro pakia. Hiki ato hiki, hiki ato hiki, hia ha ha. E tama te wawana, e tama te maro, roina hokia, te mahia te wawana, he tau, handa, houe, 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 kamate, ora ko, kamate, ora ko, uru, uru na, tiki, waka, hiti te, waupa, 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 pane, hiti te ra.
It'd only be fitting now if we finished with tūtira mai nā iwi. Everyone be upstanding, thank you. You too? It's like well, how wonderful now to, it brings us to the next part of when we welcome somebody, and I'd like to now invite our tuia for 2024, Harono Hokianga, to come forward, and I'll ask our councillor Anna Anna Apatu to introduce her, and she's bringing her sister who's on school holidays, Hannah. So, Anne, you're very welcome to stay, and but you're also able to go. Lovely to see you. It's lovely to see you. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Councillor Apatu.
Tēnā koutou katoa. It's my pleasure to introduce our tuia for this year. I'd just like to have a couple of minutes on tuia. So tuia is a rangatahi Māori mentoring program, which is actually led by our mayors throughout the rohe, our country. Hastings District Council has been incredibly supportive of the tuia program. Last year, in fact, we had 2 tuia go through the program, and this year we're really fortunate that we also have 2 tuia that we have committed to. We have a great team of support, and there are a couple of councillors, Councillor Jessup, myself, that are tucked in behind the mayor to support the program as well. We do have Shannon Noho Ko, who is unable to be here. She's full-time study, so she is one of our tuia. But I'm now going to pass you on to Harano Hokianga, who is going to just give us a brief about her experiences so far.
Here taunga rarau, here taunga haukunui, here taunga haro te kāhunei, here taunga takoto nei. Ka tika ka mihi au I tō tātou nei atua I te rangi, tēnā koe mō tau āwhina, mō tau arahi nei a tātou I ēnei wā, I tēnei marama, I tēnei tau. Ka tika ka mihi au I tēnei whare o tātou, kua whakaraui ka mai a tātou I tēnei rangi a tāhua. Ka tika ka mihi au ki tō mātou hunga mate kua wehe atura haere haere o ki atura. Ki te hunga ora, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Harano Hokianga ahau, ko Kahurana ki te maunga, ko Ngaruroro te aua, ko Kahurana, ko Ngaruroro te aua, ko Kahurana ki te marae, ko Ngai te rangi koe ana ki tōku hapu, ko Ngāti Kahungunu ki here taunga tōku iwi. Kia ora everybody, my name is Harano Hokianga. I am a local born Māori girl. I attended a kura kaupapa Māori my whole entire life. All I've known is to speak Māori, know that I'm Māori. And today I'd like to share a little bit of me and my journey being a tuia. So, funny fact, 2017 or 18, I was nominated to be our rohe's rangatahi matariki recipient, and that was my first time meeting Mayor Sandra. She approached me and had asked, "Oh, I think you should be my tuia next year." And I had no clue what she was talking about at that time, being 17 at the time, and I've just won an award, and I was like, okay, yes, I'll definitely take you up on that. But I never did. I was stuck in school life, but a few years back, I noticed that one of my friends had taken part of this program, and I thought, wow, what is this? I know I heard it from the mayor, and so I dove in a bit more and had conversations with my friends and family that have done it in the past, and I just thought, wow, this is such an amazing opportunity for me to be able to join the wānanga, the program, whatever you would call it. So this year I decided to apply, and I don't want to be a kumara, but I had a feeling that I would most definitely get the position. I said to Shannon, who unfortunately couldn't be here, her and I are good friends, very good friends, even though we've known each other for barely 6 weeks, that I said to her, you know, if it was just 1 or 2, I knew I was going to win. And she said, "That's really mean." I was like, "I'm sorry, but yes." But no, this wānanga, this kaupapa is so amazing. It's been a while since I've been able to dive into what it is to me that means to be Māori. And this program, this wānanga, is a great opportunity for young rangatahi to experience those experiences and having sort of difficult conversations around what we think a great Māori role model looks like. From my experience, in life, there were not many great Māori role models in my life. The one person I could look towards is my auntie. Her name is Flo Wanahu, and she is the principal to Te Kurakaupapa Māori o Te Wānanga Wharetapere o Tākitamu. I attended that school from the age of 6 till my graduation. My auntie had a big hand in shaping me to be the great person that I am today, and I'd like to thank her because she's done a lot for Māori rangatahi and young Māori children of Hastings. During COVID, my auntie and my family, we got out on our school van and delivered care packages all around the rohe to our family and friends from our kura. We did that every single day, made sure that everyone was okay, and my auntie also is someone to see if someone is in a line for getting food and is struggling to buy themselves the food but are paying for their friends. She's always been the one to step up and say, hey, I can get that for you. So I'd like to thank my auntie for being a great role model. And I believe that being a tuia has enabled me to be that role model for other rangatahi that look for someone else, because a lot of our rangatahi are really consumed over the stereotypes that our Māori people are under, specifically our young people, that we aren't smart enough, we don't amount to anything, we're just criminals and we're stealers and we aren't hardworking. But I can tell you for a fact that we are very hardworking, very educated, very passionate about being Māori, about where we come from. But I stand here today because I want to be that role model for those who don't feel that way, for those who don't know that there's someone like me standing here today representing them. I come from a family of 10 kids. I was the oldest sister. This is my beautiful little sister Anna over here. I didn't want to invite the rest because it would have filled the whole house. So I just want to say that it's really important that Māori have a stand in the council. For my kura, my kids only know Te Reo Māori and they know only tikanga Māori and where they come from. And to have people like me, o Matua Heke, o Whaia Jessup, o Whaia Apatu in here, representing our people, gives them the opportunity to say, hey, I can strive for that role, I can be like that, I can be that person, I can be the Mayor of Hastings one day, I can be the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
Yes.
That used to be my dream growing up. From 13 onwards, I'd say, every time I had an opportunity to tell someone that was me, I would say, I'm going to be the first Māori Prime Minister of New Zealand. And with this role, this has helped me get back into that position of being that role with that person I used to be. I'm now a mum and also a teacher, so my priorities have changed in a bit, but I definitely want to install good values and good things for my son. He is really cute and his name's Wyatt, and I just like to tell anyone about him. But other than that, all I can say is that our program is amazing. It's an amazing opportunity for young Māori people. Going into the wānanga, I thought, wow, we're coming here, we're going to learn about policies and procedures for our council. So that was my thinking going into it. And it was the total opposite. It was everything that I didn't know I needed. And it was amazing. All the kids, all the young adults in the wānanga are just really accomplished, well, Māori people. A lot of them are environmentalists fighting for the rights for our seas and waters and land. A lot of them are lawyers, just really accomplished young people. And to have the opportunity to be around like-minded people like myself is an amazing opportunity. So I thank you guys for supporting this wānanga and this program, because I believe that this is a great step forward for young rangatahi Māori. I think that's it.
Oh,
There's just one little add-on, sorry.
So, growing up, I've attended a lot of leadership programs all around the world. So I've represented Hastings in San Francisco, in California. I've been to places such as Stanford University, Facebook, Uber, Google, YouTube, all those America big giant businesses. I've represented Aotearoa. There I've also gone to Rarotonga for a leadership program as well. Up and down the country, I've attended many leadership programs, and I feel that I have a lot of experience and knowledge to hand down to our younger ones coming up. And given that I'm sort of still young, it helps, I guess. But yeah, thank you.
well said. Arono, well said. Did you want to say something? Our leadership in Heretaunga Hastings, Aotearoa New Zealand is in great hands. Don't worry about the mayor, just go straight to the Prime Minister.
Ako te amarangi ki mō te hāpai o ki mwiri te tūturutanga mahi pono o te Māori mana motu hake e tihai Māoriora. E te raukura haramai ki tātou nei tēpu. E te kura nui, e te kura roa, e te kura o tawhiti, nā mai haramai. Mauri o mai, o pukenga whia ko mā tauranga kia tau. Nā reira e harono. I was sitting there going, you need to tell them about Stanford. You need to tell them all the story. And it's just a pleasure to see one of our Raukura students that's gone through the system and has taken those opportunities that come by every so often. And it's only right, I'm gleaming here, sitting here and go, oh, there we go. We've improved on that one. We've definitely improved on that. Aronga, we welcome you to the table. We welcome your knowledge and understanding. As a rangatahi tonu, taiuhi tonu, nā reira, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Henry.
I thought you were going to sing a song.
My wife was sung, it was just
Pai tērā.
Thank you for that beautiful presentation. Aren't we very blessed to have such an amazing young Māori leader who is going to represent not just us Heretaunga Hastings, but Aotearoa New Zealand. We're very excited to be working with both our tuia this year. Absolutely outstanding wahine tour. So thank you so much. And moving right along, we have a paper there. Would you like to move that, Henry?
Yes, Worship. I just wondered, point of order, if we move both those papers, which was Anne and Renata's acknowledgement, as well as this paper as well. I'm happy to move that, Your Worship.
Thank you. So we'll start with the item 6, the acknowledgement of Anne and Renata. Would you like to move that?
Yes.
Your second. And Simon, you'd like to move that paper. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you. That's carried. And the second paper on our tour, 2024, Councillor Apatu, you'd like to move that? And Councillor Jessup, you wish to second? Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Moving on now to the Mayor's Report, April 2024. First of all, can I acknowledge and thank all the councillors who have represented us over the past month, had many openings and many celebrations, and there have been a few, haven't there? We've been running, and thank you all for your contribution. There has been many exciting activities and events for Heretaunga Hastings. We hosted the first ever Children's Festival Liftoff. We welcomed the first ever BMX New Zealand Championships in Havelock North. We premiered the first movie, Opia, by the Eastern Screen Alliance, made here in Hastings. We have opened the Camberley Basketball Court roof, and we attended New Zealand Zone 3, LGNZ Zone 3 meeting in Tairāwhiti. We supported the Women's Refuge fundraiser and we celebrated the first harvest of Green Colin New Zealand's gorgeous table grapes in Bridge Parr. We launched the Hastings Heritage Urban Trails in our city, and we loved seeing the aria competition won by our very own opera singer, Alfred Fornetti, For e Monga Anga. Oh, Nigel won't just say that. Could you just say that? Just say that.
Alfred Fornotti Poimoano.
Formoana. So Alfred is one of the four brothers from Flaxmere, and he won the aria competition. And I just happened to be in the MTG too, and didn't know he was there. And I was just so thrilled to think that he's just finished his masters in Hamilton, and he's now on the world circuit heading to Europe. We have 2 housing developments underway, one launched, Iona and Havelock North, and one completed in Flaxmere. We presented John Lachlan, the Primary Sector Industry Leader of the Year. We celebrated the Waiheke Arts Festival, the Waiheke Arts Village reopening. We attended the EIT graduation, and we attended the Mayfair Community Fair, and welcomed back the National Youth Drama School. We welcomed the Hawke's Bay Auto Extravaganza and attended the opening of the MTG Foundation exhibition. We also celebrated the great chief of Omahu, Renata Kawipo, at a prayer breakfast on Saturday. And the biggest and brightest yet, Lantern Festival, was held this year, just last week in Hastings. Many, many thanks to everyone who has shared the load to celebrate our beautiful Heritonga Hastings district. Happy to move my report, and you'll see yourselves all there, but I'm trying to keep it short. So thank you all for your help sharing the load in the last month. Happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Corbyn. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Now we move on to the Gilbertson Road request for closing, the Gilbertson Road at Parkify Road entrance. We have the lead petitioner, Evan, but Evan isn't coming today, but we have Bruce coming to talk about this road closure. Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report should stand by itself, and pretty much more than happy to answer any queries. I did go back to the original petitioner to get a bit more information. The nature of the petition was probably a bit brief, so we were able to do a bit of background work with that. Obviously, any closure there was going to have an impact on the HBRC operation, so there were discussions with the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Works Group. Out of that is pretty much what arose out of that was a recommendation as per the report, but happy to answer any queries.
Thank you, Bruce. And I know that residents for many, many years have been struggling with Gilbertson Road and that entrance with legal fly tipping, etc., etc. It's been problematic for a long, long time. Councillor Watkins?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Bruce, just in relation to all the unruly activity that happens in that stretch of road, looking at where you propose to put the barrier, temporary barrier, what stops those same people coming from the north end of Gilbertson Road, and now it's closed off, having an absolute ball in that area?
I think thank you for that, Councillor. I think we've been quite fortunate as, ironically, since Cyclone Gabrielle, we haven't seen any of that level of activity through there. It's been quite surprising. We had periods when it was closed off, but it has been open down through there. It's still closed off at Pakifai Gilbertson intersection, but we haven't had those sort of occurrences there. I think the only incident that's been reported has been fly tipping, and that's only one off that I'm aware of. I appreciate that there is every possibility of it coming back. We do have a CCTV mounted at the intersection of Pakifai Road and Gilbertson, which would allow for overwatch through that area. And I'm also mindful that the petitioner has been, or they will be looking at a CCTV at the Brookfields Road, Gilbertson Road end.
Very happy with that. Thank you, Worship.
Would you like to move the recommendations, Councillor Watkins?
Very happy if there's no more questions.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon, second.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two questions. It's a no-brainer, of course, but it's just some of the detail. The first is the cost of this temporary road closure has been put, according to my calculation, about 40,000 a year. That seems an extraordinary sum of money for a few plastic barriers across the end of the road. That's my first question. And the second one is, why have we chosen to, under this proposal, to block it some distance down the road, when in fact for the last 14 months, my understanding is it's been closed right on the border of Pakafai Road, meaning you can't turn off Pakafai Road, which seems a more logical approach.
Thank you, councillor. In terms of the barriers that have been looked at, as you would have seen in the report, that the traffic management that's in place at the moment is costing us around about $3,500 per month. So it has to be checked. We're looking at sort of a more fixed temporary closure, and the nature of that is getting it at the location which best serves the needs of the HBRC Works Group, as they have been doing a workaround to deal with what they've got, but by the same token, they have been tied up with a lot of the stop bank works. As they move into the business as usual for the maintenance of the stop banks, as we're looking at what would work best for them in terms of the overall way that they operate. And hence, in that regard, is by taking the temporary closure a little bit further down the road, it does maintain that access to the stop bank, both for the HBRC Works Group, but also for cyclists and walkers that want to use through. It's very difficult at the moment if you're looking at cycling along the stop bank or walking, because that is basically a very good barrier to prevent that.
Sorry, I did have a third question, which I forgot to ask. If the road, Brookvale Road is Brookvale Road, isn't it? The bridge is re-established, it is part of the cycle network. Will that be catered for somehow?
Through you, Madam Chair, I think that's a key part of this being a temporary closure as well. So there's a wider form and function review of the transport network, which will inform what goes back to Brookfields and the connection and how the network works. And that may inform the need to keep a cycling link through there, or how the traffic may change. Because I guess one of the things to the earlier question that Mr. Conaghan answered of Councillor Watkins is, at the moment, the traffic that used to go between the two cities is no longer flying with the bridge out, which is seeing less traffic that was running around Gilbertson to turn left onto the bridge. So this step that's recommended in the report provides a closure now, but still gives the council and the system a chance to review what and how we finally treat once we know how the wider transport system will work.
I'll just ask a supplementary question on the costs. Will the costs remain as they are, which, as I said, I calculate about 40,000 a year? It still seems an awful lot of money for what is provided.
Through you, Madam Chair. I think in that regard, it's effectively a one-off cost in getting that sort of fixed temporary closure in place, as compared to something that has to be monitored at the present time. So our temporary traffic management that's in place does require surveillance, I guess, to make sure it's fit for purpose. So the cost, it's a relatively small cost in terms of providing for that community safety in the area.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Nixon asked 3/4 of my questions. The last one, who actually pays that cost? Is it Hawke's Bay Regional Council or HDC? Or Cyclone Recovery? Who meets that cost?
It's a Hastings District Council cost, and we'll be working through our subsidy arrangements with NZTA, who'll be paying a large portion of that.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, thank you. How do we ensure that unsavoury activity and stuff doesn't occur there, and also maintenance and the like? I've been down Ruahapia Road recently, and it seemed that the gates were open at one end. There was someone sleeping in a car there, and it wasn't functioning that well. So I'm just interested to know what we do to keep an eye on these places once we do close them.
Through you, Madam Chair, as I'd intimated earlier, is we actually do have a surveillance camera, CCTV, at the intersection of Pakafai and Gilbertson, and that would actually provide great overwatch on the location of the temporary closure. So that's something different that Ruahapia doesn't have. I become aware that some of the issues with Ruahapi were associated with some of the operations that were going on and gates had been left open. So with this one, is we effectively will have that 24/7/365 overwatch once it goes in.
Oh. Yes, thank you. Any further questions or comments? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Okay, it was Councillor Watkins and Councillor Nixon with the mover and seconder. Thank you. Right, moving right along, just before we move to item 9, I'd like to have a very warm welcome to our Youth Council who has joined us today. Yay! And could we take a minute? I know I'm putting you on the spot. If you wouldn't mind standing up and introducing yourself. Thank you. Starting from one end and moving down to the other, that would be lovely. Well, it's wonderful to have you all in the chamber today and giving up your very dear school holidays to be with us. This is really impressive. But we are actually going to deal with item 10 first, and we'll come back to the item number 9 of the LTP because we have Bruce here. So Bruce, we'll take your item 10 now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the report itself, especially the pictures, probably tells the story of some of the issues with this particular walkway. It is one that has been an ongoing problem for a number of years and finally has come to fruition in getting it to this stage. After going through it, undertaking the crime prevention through environmental design assessment is probably diabolical, at the very least. As I said, the photos probably reflect the issues with it. Photos 4 and 5 give an indication of some of the particular issues in terms of people being able to hide in there. So from an anti-social perspective, everything is there around it. Any opportunities to enhance it are pretty much limited in the sense that it would require a significant amount of land to try and get effectively a high quality alleyway. So on the balance of everything, the recommendation is that this alleyway go through the road stopping process with a view that it being closed off.
Thanks so much, Bruce. I'll move first to Councillor Harvey, who has been following this and brought us to our attention, and then we'll move to Councillor Scholler.
Yes, thank you very much, and thanks, Bruce, for acting on this. I emailed the resident who had accosted me a couple of times out surfing, actually, about this, and then I had a coffee with him at Matt's Cafe in Hamoana, so about it a little bit further. And when I emailed him 2 days ago to say that this was now on the agenda paper, he was in Mahia surfing, and and he was forever grateful, but he wanted to make sure that it did go through and that I was to relay that to him as quickly as I could after the meeting. So, yeah, just thanks for sorting this one out.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, move it. Yeah.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Scholler.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, very happy to second. Also like to acknowledge that unfortunately it's still in a process and people still get 40 days with which to object, but hopefully given the photos that's not going to happen. So well done, Councillor Harvey, for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you. And you're happy to second, Councillor Scholler. Thank you. And can I just say, yes, Bruce, this has been on our radar for a very long time and we're very pleased to see this paper in front of us today. So we have a mover and a second. No further questions or comments from anyone? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you very much, Bruce. Now we move on to the adoption of our draft long-term plan and draft development contributions. Just a few opening comments from me, and then I'll hand over to the staff to present some slides. And first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the working party who have worked incredibly hard with our staff on this long-term plan, particularly the Chair, Councillor Fowler, Councillor Kerr, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Sholem, Councillor Watkins and Councillor Burrow, and all the officers, Les, Ross, Richard, Bruce, and the enormous team that has been behind bringing this LTP process to today. It has been a journey, there is no question about it. We have experienced in the last year the third largest national disaster state of emergency called in Aotearoa, New Zealand, Cyclone Gabrielle on the 14th of February 2023. And from that time on, our year has been, and 18 months, has been incredibly difficult for our community, for our rebuild, for our ratepayers. And today we look at the enormity of how we will pay for what we have been through. It has been certainly very challenging and uncertain times and very difficult planning environment, not knowing how we will attack and be able to rebuild our roading structure, our networks and our temporary bridges. We've spent $155 million on roading and slips and temporary bridges alone. We've spent about $50 million in the response. And we've also spent $50 million on the Category 3 buyout, all borrowed money. The scale of investment required to rebuild our infrastructure post-Cyclone Gabrielle calls for, in this plan, an 8% recovery targeted rate to the damage to our network. This long-term plan also focuses on the infrastructure we need today and for our future generations, to house our people, to support our economy, to maintain and invest in new resilient roads, to build bridges and quality water infrastructure. This is about looking after what we have and rebuilding. We're experiencing enormous escalating costs, high inflation, high interest, high labour and materials. And today we have a draft plan for your consideration, an engagement and communication plan to take to our community for them to give feedback on this draft plan. And that is what we will consider today. I now invite the Chief Executive, Nigel and both Bruce, to share some slides with us on the draft plan.
Kia ora through you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, councillors. Could I just echo and acknowledge that for this council, this has been the most challenging long-term plan that we've probably ever had to deal with. And again, my thanks to the council, but particularly the council working group and to the staff for working through a set of very difficult choices and trade-offs. I think if we acknowledge, the last number of years has presented both challenges and opportunities, and whether that's the response to Havelock North in 2016, responding to the closure of the Opera House, the opportunities around CBD revitalisation, housing, heading into, it doesn't seem that long ago, but it seems like a lifetime ago, the things that we were grappling with in COVID, and then along came February the 14th, 2023, and just changed the picture completely. So we do have in front of council for consideration this afternoon a proposed long-term plan for adoption for consultation with the community that is proposing a 25% increase in rates in year 1, 15% in year 2 and 10% in year 3. And it is made up of a combination of both some what we're calling base rate increases and recovery related costs. And it's kind of worth unpacking that, because the base for year 1 is 17% of the rate increase. And the big drivers of that really go back to some of the things I've opened with. Our forecast starting position on debt on the 1st of July of this year will be $396 million, and reflects that we've spent over the last period of time $157 million in Three Waters, $30 million on restoring the Opera House and Municipal Building. We've invested $31 million in parks and the broader CBD revitalisation. Parks includes decisions that the community fully supported only a short period of time ago, $7.5 million on the acquisition of the Tomoana Showgrounds and $1 million to deal with some of the associated infrastructure. And as Mayor Sandra has said, the recovery to date, I'm going to touch on that a little bit further on, the net impact on the council in terms of the debt that we've had to take on in the last 15 months is $44 million in relation to the recovery costs. And going forward, we have some quite big expenditure in the first 3 years for infrastructure renewals and maintenance. You'll recall in the LTP in 2021, the clear message from the rural community was just give us our rural roads, and that's reflected in the forward investment profile, as are some quite big renewal costs coming for the wastewater treatment plant in Clive. And as Mayor Sandra said, it's never been more expensive than currently in terms of infrastructure and infrastructure cost and inflation. So that's what's driving the base number. And if we go to the next slide, please. The council working group and the staff have worked through some pretty big things to get to where the proposed long-term plan is. We've basically deferred and rephased $50 million worth of projects in terms that we won't be doing in any time soon in the CBD, park upgrades, walking and cycling. We have had to make some judgments around not sweating assets too much and taking unnecessary risks, but deferred some infrastructure renewals and upgrades. We're clearly consulting on the closure of Frimley Pool. There's some reduced levels of services. Whilst we haven't worked out all of the detail yet, you have tasked me as the Chief Executive, and it has been baked into these budgets that we've got to find $2.5 million of operational savings and also a further second phase of work to identify other opportunities. Now, we don't know what all of that looks like, but again, that is going to be a mix of, do we do some of the activities that we're doing? Are some of our current levels of services going to have to be revisited? But that is the space appropriately that we're going to have to go into over the next period of time. So just turning to recovery, where there's a significant proposed recovery spend and a recovery rate that Mr. Allen will talk to shortly. But it's worth reflecting that in 15 months, we've spent nearly $250 million across recovery, across roads and bridges. Property buyouts, worth taking a moment to reflect that, in 6 months, just 6 months of you adopting a voluntary buyout policy and a voluntary buyout office, we've now completed over 50% of the Category 3 buyouts. But it comes with all of the associated costs that we're funding through debt. And the net impact has been $44 million in terms of the council's net fiscal position. But looking forward, and what we're really grappling with, is the $1 billion plus recovery costs for our community. And, again, on assumptions yet to be confirmed, but hopefully solid assumptions, that we will get a 73% fiscal assistance rate. And the Mayor and her colleagues are appropriately advocating for the government to do even more than that. But at the moment, on the assumed 73% funding assistance rate, it's a $230 million impact, and we are proposing to borrow that money to get on with the recovery of our roads, our bridges, our culverts, complete the voluntary buyout. So that is what we're grappling with, and I'll just hand over now to Mr. Allen to just take you through how we're proposing to structure the cyclone recovery targeted rate.
Thank you, Mr. Bickle, and through you, Your Worship. That's right. So the working party, as we've alluded to, did a lot of work working through the long-term plan process. A big part of that was the introduction of the cyclone recovery targeted rate and how that was to be implemented. A lot of work trying to ensure that the the burden of that targeted rate fell as equitably as possible across the district. So, different methodologies have been applied across our two rating areas. We've used land value as the basis, which created a 67-33 split between rating area 1 and rating area 2. And then trying to work out how do we get that best and most equitably applied across individual properties. And that's where, the fixed charge, half of that targeted rate getting applied through a fixed charge to each individual property, and then a land value based calculation methodology to apply the balance. So, there's lots of different options that were explored. The working party and staff have landed on this. The detail of this proposal and the workings behind it and methodology is detailed in the long-term plan documentation. But it is new, but we believe that this is a fair and equitable apportionment of the costs. I think that, as Mr. Bickle alluded to, a key thing with this is that the recovery is being debt funded. So $230 million is proposed, and there's a lot of assumptions around that, what goes into it. But effectively, it's borrowing, and the targeted rate is set to then repay that debt over a 16-year period. Just turning quickly to capital expenditure and debt going forward. It's a big part of this long-term plan. Capital expenditure is significant. It would have been significant without the cyclone, and in the program is $2.1 billion worth of capital expenditure over the 10 years. That equates obviously to over $200 million a year. That's a level of expenditure that this council has never delivered before, and in the early years that's dominated by the cyclone recovery. Ultimately, that's got to be funded somehow, and in a large part, council needs to use debt to get there. Mr. Bickles alluded to the starting position of where our debt profile is. That will peak at just over $700 million in 2029-30, and will push council to its debt to revenue ratio to 250%. In the local government sector, we're constrained on what we can borrow through the local government funding agency at 2.8 times or 280%. So that really doesn't leave council with much headspace should something else occur over that period of time. In fact, it provides a $90 million debt headroom. So with that, the financial strategy that's included within the LTP is a very important document. And the recommendations that you have in front of you today for the adoption of the draft LTP acknowledge that. It acknowledges that there's the 250% debt to revenue ratio as a peak. It acknowledges and takes you through the process that council will go to bring that level of debt down, and you'll see that from that peak of 29-30 as that comes back. That's the impact of the targeted rate coming into effect. It's the impact of the fact that we're borrowing that money and repaying it over 16 years. Another big component within this LTP is growth and development contributions and how that's funded. Total growth spend over the 10 years of the plan is projected to just a tick over $200 million. And as we've talked around this table before, growth-related expenditure is costing more than we've previously modelled and budgeted. It's getting more complex and it's getting more expensive. And with that, development contributions are projected to increase to meet that increased cost. And with that, and throughout the plan, and as we see, aligning with the overall debt profile of council, the debt held from growth-related projects and funded through development contributions will increase from $20 million to over $100 million. And we've acknowledged previously the need to work through our growth program and our development contribution policy in more detail in the year or so ahead. So on that note, Your Worship, happy to hand over for questions and any comments. And can I just reiterate, reiterate Mr. Bickle's comments and thank the staff. This has been one heck of an LTP to pull together. It would have been challenging without the impacts of the cyclone, but the cyclone's just made it that much more difficult. So to get to this point is a Herculean effort by a large number of staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Before I hand over to questions, I'd like to invite the chair of the LTP Working Party, Councillor Fowler, to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. The Councillor LTP Working Party was asked tasked with examining in more detail with council officers the operations of council. This was in light of the challenging financial circumstances, as the first cut of the proposed council rate increase was around 44%. Our aim under such circumstances was to review that council activities related only to its core activities, eliminating nice-to-haves, and provide as much verification as possible that council operations and expenditure is efficient. In other words, the provision only of essential core services and any projects that, if not completed, would make the community worse off. We therefore sought assurance or outside council verification that the council water's infrastructure spend, which is significant over the 3 years of the LTP, is justified. This gave the LTP working group a level of comfort going forward with this expenditure. This mahi or work started in early February 2024, and we met through to April this year, of course, with its findings being regularly reported and discussed with those councillors who attended the full council workshops. The LTP working group's activities were scrutinised and reviewed by the two independent council external appointees to the Audit and Risk Committee, Mr John Nichols and Mr Graham McGlynn, who were satisfied that the LTP working group's approach to the LTP. The community is well aware, no doubt, of the impact of Cyclone Gabriel, and that the government would not provide 100% of the costs relating to this event. Therefore, a portion will fall on local authorities, which is significant in terms of our ability to pay. Mr Allen has shown by his presentation the impact in terms of our transportation roading costs and other costs that fall on the Hastings District Council. Last year, this council consulted with the community on the approximate 50 million financing required for costs associated with Category 3 buyouts, with those who submitted understanding this in the majority. The LTP working group recommended for the draft plan for the consultation document that a targeted cyclone rate in year 1 of 8% and in year 2 of 6% to pay for these costs. The term of council loans is normally 25 years, but the group recommended 16 years to save millions in financing costs. Many thousands in our Hastings and Heretaunga district will be acutely aware of the cost pressures building in the last few years to them. Energy costs, electricity, gas, petrol, diesel, food, and large increases in insurance costs, not to mention mortgage and loan interest rates, all caused directly or indirectly by inflation. Councils are also not immune to inflation, and in particular, we have been dramatically affected by infrastructure inflation, our core business activity, obviously, such as bridges, 38% more expensive than 3 years ago, and roading and water systems are 27% more expensive thanks to inflation. Council too is affected by increased interest rates, higher insurance premium and labour costs. It will be of little comfort to our ratepayers to know that our rate rises with the Cyclone Gabriel targeted rate that are proposed at 17% for year 1 of the LTP and proposed 8% for year 2 is consistent with many other local government authorities throughout New Zealand. While these proposed rate increases will be alarming to our ratepayers, consideration of a lower rate rise than what is recommended before us, I believe, would cost the community more in future years if loan financing is to secure the gap of reduced rating income. Reducing spending on infrastructure or sweating the assets to the near end of their useful lives risks their near or catastrophic failure, which can be deemed a risky strategy, which would not only cost ratepayers more in the long run, but lead to service disruptions. Reductions in council operational costs may also lead to service disruptions to the public. The proposed rate rises, as seen in the recommendations in the consultation document, including the targeted cyclone rate is 25% in year 1, 15% in year 2, and 10% in year 3. I believe that these are the most financially operational and prudent way for the council to maintain public service levels and provide for our infrastructure. However, I acknowledge the financial distress these proposed rate increases may cause to many in our community. I therefore encourage the community to read the LTP draft consultation document and to send us your thoughts for our consideration. There are also a number of other recommendations before Council, also endorsed by the Council's Audit and Risk Committee external members. These are for a balanced budget by year 3 of the LTP. Having a balanced budget means returning funding to our normal council operations without borrowing to meet the financial deficit of council expenditure. An unbalanced budget means a funding shortfall with expenditure met with loan funding. Without this, in years 1 and 2, our proposed rate increases would be higher. But this approach in the long term or even medium is not a financial sustainable one. The other recommendations, such as approval of capital spending decisions not included in the LTP to require council approval and also keeping within the set loan funding ratios, future watchdogs on council spending. We have asked the Chief Executive in year 1 of the LTP to look for 2.5% savings across the organisation and also to prepare by December 2024 an additional 2.5% savings in the 20 to 25% financial year. However, in addition to this, I want to move as an additional recommendation, and if that could be please shown on the screen, that a working party be retained to continue to review the efficiency of council activities, the membership of which should be appointed by Her Worship the Mayor. The group's mahi or work would not bypass normal council reporting and would still go to full council. When that comes up, everybody might be able to just zap that up a little bit so you can see it. So that's obviously the highlighted one. That the council long-term plan working group, LTPWG, continue for the current elected council term. The Mayor will decide on the membership of the LTPWG. The focus of the LTPWG on behalf of the council will be on monitoring council adherence to delivery of recommendations from B to X. Additionally, the LTPWG will focus on council taking strategic opportunities for better value, cost-effective and productive utilisation of council resources to deliver enhanced wellbeing outcomes in accordance with its long-term plan priorities for Hastings District. So I'd like to move that, and also too, I would like to move the recommendations before us in regard to the council's long-term plan for the draft consultation document. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler, and thank you for your work leading the working party. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Worship.
Questions?
Just a comment, if I may. Or...
Questions? Any questions?
I'm happy to second your worship.
Thank you. Councillors, questions? Councillor Nixon.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is not a comment, it's a question. We seem to be subjected to endless shocks impacting on the council. Yeah, our debt was 50 million not that long ago. It's now forecast to reach 400. The headroom is shrinking. I'm getting to it. The headroom is shrinking as Mr. Allen pointed out. And I'm just starting to worry about what might happen in the future. How are we going to deal with the sort of shocks that we've had in recent years, from the Havelock Water crisis, COVID, Cyclone Gabriel, and also the other things that shocks or opportunities that come up, like AMP Showgrounds. How are we going to deal with this in the future to make sure we keep within the guidelines that we set with our debt limits?
I'll start and I'll
I might
hand
start too.
to Mr. Allen. So from an officer perspective, Your Worship, I think clearly the recommendations that are before you, the choices that the council's had to work through to get to this draft is around trying to ensure that we retain some headroom. But the critical thing in the adoption of the fiscal strategy is going to require a disciplined approach to stay within the fiscal strategy that's adopted, and that whilst opportunities will come along and need to be evaluated against the priorities of council, it's going to require some fiscal disciplines to stay within that fiscal strategy that says, well, if an opportunity comes along, what is the rating impact and what's coming out or going to be deferred, because we have to stay within the rails of the fiscal strategy in order to retain some headroom, because history since 2014 in the Opera House would say at the moment they're coming along every couple of years.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. You've pretty much covered it off. But the decision-making lies with you as governors of this table. Opportunities, challenges, that all lies with you of how we deal with this. We direct the officers to say what we want to spend, where we want to spend. And in terms of being disciplined, it is about what are our priorities here. We need to fix our transport network. We need to recover from the cyclone. We need to manage and make sure we're looking after our pipes and our services. That's our core business. This is an infrastructure long-term plan, and we must focus. If it's infrastructure related and it needs to be done, we must do it. But those decisions will come back to you, and you have to stay disciplined as to an infrastructure long-term plan. That is our core business. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. We've referred to the 2.5% savings that we will be looking at, but we don't really, even in your speech before, didn't really go into detail, which I can understand, but can you please just provide some examples to the community of what some of those things you will be looking at?
Yes, thank you, through you, Your Worship. So 2.5% is $2.5 million. That operational saving has been baked into this draft proposal, so we have no choice but to find it. And, need to be careful because we need to go through a process with both the organisation, staff and community about some of those choices, because it will come to activities that council are currently undertaking in some of the levels of service. So, for example, and these are just examples, and for example, a priority for council nearly a decade ago was to play an active role in youth employment through Mahi for Youth. Now we have a current model that is part Crown funded and part rates funded. In the decade since we've been doing that, there are now 72 different providers in that space. A question that we need to pose is, do we need to continue to be involved in carrying out that activity? Maybe just to the level of the government funding that we get. Then there will be questions around levels of service. We have our libraries and art galleries and a range of community services open 7 days. That comes with the associated operating costs. It will be a mix of activity analysis, choices around levels of service, and that's the only way that we're going to be able to make the quantum of savings that we're talking about. So all of that's on the table.
Thank you. And then the second one is, it's been reported that there was an increase in salaries between 2019 and today of $10 million. How much of that is actually related to cyclone recovery and resources wrapped around that? Yeah,
through you, Madam Chair. Look, it's a mix of things. There's some of that. I think that warrants some further investigation in its own right. It's a combination of both some increases in staff numbers. Some of it will be associated with recovery. Some of it is about what has happened in the market and in certain parts of the market, but just the wage price inflation that has occurred in what has been up until very recently a very buoyant labour market, and where there's been significant wage price inflation. So it's a mix of all of those things, but things with the recommendation that's on the table from Councillor Fowler, I would imagine an area that we will do some deeper dive with the council working group.
Just one further one, please. Sorry. There's been a lot of, there's been reports done by Local Government New Zealand and a lot of talk around what are the revenue streams or the potential things that we can tackle or see as opportunities. I know there's not necessarily any magic wands, but is there an area of focus in that regard within our council, not just necessarily what Local Government New Zealand are doing?
Again, through you, Your Worship, I think that one of the things that we're going to have to think really carefully about, and Mr. Allen highlighted that, we've become a growth council with a growing population. The challenges around how we manage growth infrastructure. So I don't want to get political. I think the engagement with the current government around councils being required to think about how they make 30 years worth of land supply available. There's going to have to be some really different funding and financing tools, or some different approaches to how we grapple with this. I think there are opportunities to work with our development community perhaps differently around how we do infrastructure, and whether there's some creative ways that can actually drive some efficiencies. So I think you captured it well. At the moment, it's not real clarity, but something's going to have to change in terms of some of the funding and financing levers, and we're going to have to challenge ourselves about some different ways of working in the areas that are basically consuming the most cost, and a lot of that is in the infrastructure-related areas.
And just to further to that is, we are in a time of change. With Local Waters done well, that's the Three Waters infrastructure, and how that's going to impact on us and our ratepayers, and we will know that by the end of the year. So, this is the change that we're facing about how we invest in the future, and seeking further funding from the government, from our recovery from Cyclone Gabrielle, for emergency financial assistance rates. And so this will have an impact on how we will rate our community, because we're going to do everything we can to try and seek some more funding to reduce the burden on our ratepayers. Councillor Hickey?
Can I just say one thing, Your Worship, through you, just while I remember, is look, one of the things is, we know, and we're completely committed through myself and the leadership team, that we know we've got to find operational savings that have been baked in. We know that everybody in the community, not just council, households, businesses, are basically having to make some pretty tough choices, really challenge themselves in some different ways of thinking. But I also want to acknowledge in the infrastructure nature of our recovery, the things that Mr. Allen's put on the table, $200 million a year of capital expenditure. Usually in a recovery context, and so I use facts here, like Christchurch and Kaikoura, usually organisations grow significantly in size to manage the size of the recovery. And some of the challenges that we will face, and we're seeing them already, as the government also gears up to do major capital investment in state highways, things that are at a real premium at the moment are talented people that actually aren't that cheap in terms of doing transport and infrastructure related work. So there are some real challenges for us in the next period of time. But the message is, from us, we're up for that as the staff. We know the $2.5 million's been baked in already, but that's the start of the work we're going to have to look at.
Councillor Hickey?
Good, Your Worship. I have two questions. The first question is, what options are there for, or in the event that ratepayers are not in a position to pay their rates? If we could have an answer regarding that.
Could you answer that for us? Thank you.
Through Your Worship. So thank you, Councillor. We do have existing policies around rates for emissions, but also rates for postponements. And the finance team, the rates department in particular, very attuned to working with our ratepayers when they're having a few troubles in meeting their rates, and putting together payment plans to support them.
Is supplementary to that, sir, what happens if they actually can't meet that? Like they've gone through a plan and there is no plan, there is no money. What happens?
There is a long long process that the team worked through. You know, I guess at the end of the day, the ultimate point of time is a rating sale. We very, very rarely get to that point in time. The staff work incredibly hard with ratepayers to help them through the process and to find a solution.
Thank you, sir. And the second
Councillor
question,
Heki.
Your Worship, is what formula has been applied to increase population or ratepayers, noting that our CEO has mentioned that there's a bit of a boom on in relation to the increased rates, if any?
Mr. Verhoeven will talk about the plan and the growth numbers.
There's a growth assumption in our long-term plan, Councillor Hiki, that our rating base will grow by 0.95%, and that's something that we've monitored over for probably the whole time I've worked here, 20 odd years.
Councillor Sholem.
Thank you, Worship. Like many of us, I've been receiving a lot of calls since the news broke around our proposed rates increases potentially adopted today. One of the things that I keep being asked, and I'd like to pose to officers here today so the community can hear who's listening, we've got over the next 10 years $201 million worth of new infrastructure specifically for growth programmed in. And the question that is asked is, why can't we just stop growth? And so I would like to present that question so the community can hear.
Who wishes to answer that? Ms. Allen.
Through your Worship. So fundamentally, development contributions pay for growth. So the developers who are doing the work, who are getting the benefit from the growth, pay development contributions to meet the cost of the infrastructure required that enables growth. To the second part of your question, can we just turn growth off? Fundamentally, no. We can't stop people moving to Hastings. We can certainly appreciate why people do want to move to Hastings. So on that basis, if that was the case and we had more people moving in and we couldn't provide for growth, then effectively we would have more demand for the housing stock that's already here. And it would create a whole new set of problems. So I think the responsible thing for councils to do is to meet that demand. How we do that, ultimately who pays for it and how it's financed, is something that we're grappling with at the moment as we move forward. But ultimately we can't say no to people moving in.
And if I could just add a bit of colour, Your Worship, to that, it is worth reflecting that as we acknowledge the 5 years of work since this council started the leadership around how do we solve the housing crisis, one of the fundamental drivers that we had to take responsibility for as a council is we'd simply not zoned enough land and enabled enough land, and we contributed towards those outcomes in our community. There is a real balance here between not getting too far ahead of growth, who pays for growth, but the consequences for communities, your questions on behalf of the community, is if we just stopped, that the implications of that can be quite significant for people in our community. Our core role, when you strip it all back, and I think the Mayor's highlighting this as a core infrastructure budget, the core roles of local government is planning, assets and infrastructure.
And under government national policy, we are required by law through the FDS process to have a 30-year supply for residential and industrial expansion. So it is legislated that we need to provide for future growth. Last question, Councillor Corbin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Looking at the labour cost line, Councillor Harvey just said that we had a $10 million increase in salaries over the last 3 years. What information can you give us on 7.5% labour cost over the next 3 years? What dollar value is that, and where would it be allocated?
Through your worship, don't have the exact dollar number on it. Effectively, it's allocated, applied across the organisation. There's no specific growth area within council. I think if we reflect back and look at how the organisation's responded post-cyclone, there was a heavy investment of staff in areas around supporting the community with the community connector roles. Though the number of those roles is now reducing as we sort of work our way through the recovery. But counter to that is we've got a need to increase staffing within our transportation team, as Mr. Bickle alluded to previously. So whilst we've got a reduction in staff in one area, we're seeing pressures in another. You know, the $2 billion worth of capital investment over the next 10 years, with a large proportion of that around cyclone recovery, is going to require significant experienced resources to do that, and that's probably, I think, without getting into the detail, some of the drivers in that space.
Thank you.
So just to try and get a dollar value, if Cyclone Gabriel is 14%, we must have an estimate of the dollar value of that. You don't? Labor would be half of that at 7.5.
I don't have that detail on me. You've got to remember the budgets are inflation adjusted as well over the years, so that accounts for some of it as well.
Councillor Corbyn, are you comfortable with that? Would you like to come back?
It wasn't the answer that I wanted, but I'll accept it.
We can come back to you with further detail. Thank you. Take that as an action. So we have a mover and seconder on this paper. I'll take the direction of the first four speakers. Thank you. And whether I put the motion. Comment. Thank you. Seconder?
Oh, me? Who's seconded it? Me?
I'm taking the first four speakers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Like many, I never thought I would be here supporting a 25% draft rate increase to our community. But the one thing it does tell our community is it gives them confidence that we are genuine about our rebuild, genuine about rebuilding bridges and roads, unlocking infrastructure and allowing our economy to continue. I support the resolutions. I really like the additional resolution that's been added today. It gives really strong governance oversight of what the next 12 months is going to look forward, maybe the following year after that, until we get this beast of a Cyclone Gabriel back under control. So thank you. Support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I too support the recommendations. This is a catastrophic day for us all, basically, right across the community. That's why I wore my Twin Towers tie. It's that sort of feeling I've got. Sincere thanks to the Joint Working Party, who did work diligently throughout this, the long-term plan, page by page, as an inspired idea. And thank you to Councillor Fowler for recommending that they carry on being the eyes and ears for us councillors around the table and the community. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Sholem.
Thank you, Worship. I too, like Councillor Kerr, am shocked to find myself in a position where I'm supporting taking, for consultation with our community, a 25% rate increase. However, like Councillor Dixon, I would like to acknowledge the work of Councillor Fowler and everyone who was on the LTP working group for our hard mahi, trying to find savings where we could to get down from a first proposed cut of 44% to 25% is not to be sniffed at. And it is now for our community to tell us what they want us to do. What I will say is I think that we have walked a very tight rope to meet our obligations under the Local Government Act 2, to act prudently and in a manner that promotes the current but also future interests of our community by ensuring that this proposal doesn't unfairly burden our future generations. And I look at our young people here in our council chamber today. Now we need to hear from our community.
Councillor Hub.
Thank you. It's quite poignant that as our former councillor Hinari O'Keefe would say, our future ratepayers are in the room today. And hearing the decisions that we are making that will impact for many years to come. Like the others in the room, I would like to thank the Working Party, which I was involved in, and also those officers that were involved in putting together a lot of the information and the scenarios that we could play out. It was, at one stage I had my hand in my head and it was just a cloud, and the cloud was not lifting. This thing from Cyclone Gabriel will be long. We will be paying for this for years to come. Going forward, there has to be a better approach to both local and central government, as the 1 billion costs, or whatever it ends up being, just can't land on 30,000 ratepayers of our district. The honeymoon of glory projects, which we've had over the last 2 terms, I think, has also, unfortunately coming to an end. We've got to now maintain those assets that we've got, and as frugal and as prudent as we actually can, but they need to be cared for. We have benefited from central government funding, and we've also had a stronger economy, both of which we can no longer rely on. And so therefore we must be more prudent, and we really need to control our spending. We need to, as governors, we need to put the test on our officers much more, and I welcome the idea of the Working Party continuing in some capacity. We also have the fallback option of also the Performance and Monitoring Committee, which also adds that additional layer of testing there. So we need to really keep an eye on any unnecessary spending. And I think it's a difficult time for the community. I said earlier today, regional rate rise for us personally is in excess of $1,000. So these are another whack for every member of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. I've taken 4 speakers. That's all I will take.
Thank you, Worship.
You have had your right.
I just need to thank Lex and Ross and Richard and all the members of the Working Party who contributed equally, and just to say it wasn't an easy process, and the whole thing weighed very heavily on us the whole way through. So.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision and your hope for our future. While we navigate these difficult and challenging times, we must reassure our community that we will fix our roads and bridges and infrastructure. We will look after our infrastructure that we have in place now, because that is our job. So thank you. I know it's going to be challenging for a number of our community. There's a large portion on low fixed incomes, and it will be a challenge for them to find these extra rates, but we want to hear from them. We want to make sure they're engaged with this process, and we look forward to their feedback in the coming weeks. So I'm going to put those recommendations. Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by the Deputy Mayor Tania Kerr. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. We'll now break for afternoon tea. Wendy, councillor Sholin? Welcome back, everyone. Because we have our very diligent youth council with us, and I know that they want to get on with their holiday, but we love having them in the chamber. I'd like to move to item 14, the 2024 youth council appointments to council subcommittees. I'd like councillor Sholin to introduce this paper. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to our rangatahi for making the time to be here today. You truly show you are interested in politics when you give up school holidays to sit in a chamber. Councillors, you'll see before you a report which is asking us to endorse the appointment of our elected, as they've elected amongst themselves, youth council representatives upon each of our our subcommittees and some external working parties. This is something that's relatively unique and wonderful about what Hiratonga Hastings District Council does. We ensure that the future voices of our community are heard by giving our rangatahi voices on our subcommittees, and they exercise those by having two appointees who have speaking rights but not voting rights. They have, amongst themselves, put in place a senior leadership team, and they have also come up with their appointments for each of our subcommittees and working groups. So it gives me great pleasure, Your Worship, to present the 2024 Youth Council appointees.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So, Emma, did you want to come up and say anything as the officer? Wendy's taking care of everything. Well, I wish you'd all love to come and see you up the front here as we call out your names along with the subcommittees that you'll represent. Wendy, would you like to call out the names?
For the Civic Development Subcommittee, I would like to invite Keaton, Sophie and Taylor, or those who are here, to please come up. Come up and join me here, guys. For the District Development Subcommittee appointees, I'd like to invite Chris Proctor, who is also the chair of the 2024 Youth Council, Bella and Apache to please come up. While they make their way up. For the Community Wellbeing Subcommittee, I would like to invite Faison, Peter and Keaton to please come up. Keaton, you may as well just stay. For the Hastings District Rural Community Board and Rural Hall Subcommittee, we have Theo King. Thank you for taking that one for the team on the rural community's behalf. Our rural councillors would love to get to know you.
Welcome.
And for our Multicultural Strategy Working Group, who have specifically asked for Youth Council representatives, I would like to invite Ariel and Savannah to please come up. Your Worship, we also have other youth councillors in chamber today that I would also like to invite up. Some of them make up our senior leadership team on the youth council. So I'd like to invite Millie, Isabella, Ben, Swalene, sorry Swalene. God, that's terrible. And Swalene is a second year youth councillor, aren't you? As is Millie and Isabella. Your Worship, there are a number of youth councillors who couldn't make it here today, but as you can see, this is a fairly major representative of them. So if it would be my great pleasure if you would allow me to move the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Moved by councillor Sholem, seconded by councillor Apatu. Anybody have any questions about the appointments to any of our subcommittees? Anyone wish to say anything from our fabulous Youth Council 2024?
We're really looking forward to working with you this year. Sorry, I lost my voice. But we realise that it's an honour and a privilege for us to be sitting on these subcommittees with you, and we'll try and do that justice this year. Thank you.
Well said, Chris. Thank you so much. We look forward to having you all on our committees. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for coming. James, I know you've been waiting a long time. No, John, you've been waiting the longest. Could we have you up for item 11, please? So this is the dog control fees 2024-2025. This is a part of the LTP annual requirement. Pretty self-explanatory paper. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Kerr.
Happy to move, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, happy to second, Your Worship. Just one question, if I may. John, 3.2 has a decrease of 341 registered dogs in our district. What happens if an unregistered dog is located, and when that owner is located, what additional charges do they face?
Yes, thank you. They unfortunately are fined if they're caught with an unregistered dog. We do an awful lot of prep work, publicity and notifying people. We actually catch a lot of people through, inform a lot of people through email, which is quite a good way of doing it as well, because whether they move or not, the email tends to follow them. But generally we find that, say, 10% of the 13,000 that haven't registered, 1/3 are gone, 1/3 have died, and 1/3 are just avoiding registration.
Thank you for that answer. Happy to second, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Any further comments? No? I have a mover and a second. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Thank you very much, John. And note that you will bring back some recommendations to Council later in 2024. Thank you very much. Now we move on to item 12. Welcome, James. That's parking controls. Anything to add to your paper, James?
Nothing at this point. It's a pretty straightforward report. Just a couple of changes to parking controls.
Thank you. Councillor Nixon.
Yes, thanks. I just wondered, the parks in the proposed 4 parks that we're going to remove, how much would we earn off those a year? I couldn't find it in there, but if it's there, I've somehow overread it.
Okay. A month, we make $105 a month on each park.
Oh, about $5,000 a year.
$5,000 a year.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor
I'll
Watkins.
move it if you want.
Thank you, Councillor Nixon. Councillor Watkins.
Happy to second, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That's carried. Item 13, and this is the policy for freedom of the district and the approval of the charter parade. Welcome, Charles. Kia ora. Do you have anything to add to your paper or the policy?
Nothing to add other than to say, Your Worship, that the current regimental guidon for the 9th Wellington East Coast Mounted Rifles has been retrieved from this chamber, is currently housed at the officers' mess at Linton Army Camp, and on its return on the 7th of June with the approval of these policies and a charter parade, the regimental guidon will be formally laid up with this council in this chamber for perpetuity. Just to confirm that what laying up means in technical military terms is that the Gedon is currently still in active service, can be paraded. Once it's laid up, that means it is retired and is decommissioned from active service. So just to reiterate the importance of the returning of this Gedon, and the correct pronunciation of the word is Gedon, Gedon, and it will be a historic event once it is returned. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you so much, Charles. I mean, that is incredibly important to us as a district. It has so much significance, and particularly at this time around Anzac Day and the battles that our men have fought and the significance of the mounted rifles and for Hastings, Heretaunga. And so we look forward to that event on the 7th of June. Thank you. Councillor Fowler.
Yep, thank you, Worship. Thank you, Charlie, for your mahi on this. Very, very thorough and happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. Councillor Dixon.
Yeah, happy to second your Worship. Civic development went through the policy and more than happy with it. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Worship. I was just reflecting on a query I had with the policy, and I think to me it was of such value, your answer. So if I ask the question, hopefully you can explain the answer. Why is it important that mana whenua approve a parade through our town? Because I remember looking at this policy simply through a very narrow council, should be a council decision. And we had a great conversation about mana whenua need to be there as well.
Thank you, through you, Your Worship. The policy doesn't suggest that mana whenua approve a parade, but that a joint decision-making process takes place for granting the freedom of the district and exercising of the freedom to enter the district. The rationale behind why that is important is because granting of freedom of the district to a military unit approves for that military unit to enter the district as an armed body of troops, carrying weapons with swords drawn, and in the case of the mounted rifles, also with light armoured vehicles. So therefore it is important that the local mana whenua, the hapu in which the military unit has been granted freedom of entry is considered alongside the council. You're approving for an armed body of troops to enter the district without permission.
Thank you, Charles. I just found that really informative and educational. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder. I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you. That item is carried. Item number 16. Welcome, Louise. This is a request received under the Local Government Official Information Act, Lagoimas. It's an update, monthly update on the Lagoimas.
Thank you, Your Worship. Is this the Lagoima monthly update? I'll just take that as read. If there are any questions.
Any questions on the Lagoimas? No? Happy to. Oh, the charging. Oh, I'm ahead of myself. But I will do item 16 because we have any questions on item 16? Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Seconder? It's just recording the Lagoimas. Councillor Sholland, second. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Sorry, now we move back to 15. And this is the charging policy for Lagoimas. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you, Your Worship. I take the item as read, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
This is the first time that our council has considered a policy of this nature for charging for Lagoimas. Thank you. Councillor Sholland.
Thank you, Your Worship. given the incredibly tight fiscal times we find ourselves in, and the strain already put on staff, especially when we impose further savings on our chief executive, as well as ensuring our community's right to request information of us and to remain a transparent organisation, I think this strikes a very careful balance, and I'd like to commend the staff for their work in this, and I'm very happy to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Sholin. Councillor Nixon.
Yeah, this is not an official request. I just wondered, have we any idea what percentage or what extent the recovery might be? Have we sort of gone through an exercise like that, or we're just not really?
Cameron?
You look past me. Madam Chair, it's a difficult one for us to answer. Very high level estimates just based on the experience of keeping an eye on things. That this process probably consumes around effectively a quarter of an FTE in the organisation by the time staff around the organisation compile information. That goes up and down depending on traffic. I think the recovery in monetary terms will not be substantial going forward, but it will be a useful tool to what I would use the term fishing expeditions, people just willfully commissioning copious amounts of information, perhaps without a driving need on their personal part. It might refine that type of behaviour so that it's a scalpel approach rather than a sledgehammer. And for those extraordinary cases which are imposing that load on council, you balance public interest for information, but you will get your cost recovery. So, yeah, cash return will probably not be substantial, but the consumption of staff time, I expect, will drop. Thank you, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Councillor Hickey.
Kia ora. My question is just in regards to, did we have a look around the region, around the country to see how many other councils actually apply this policy or this mahi?
Through you, the Chair, we often will look to other councils to see what they have done. It's quite good not to have to reinvent the wheel, so we did look at a range of different councils, and quite a number do have internal policies just to help a little bit more internal guidance for the staff around how to apply charging.
Great, thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you. Who makes that decision around whether it is going to be charged or not? Is that the Democratic support? Is it the CE? Just interested in that, please.
I expect it will ultimately fall to my position. In terms of whether we're going to apply charges, it'll be a matter of discussion between myself and the corporate council and Louisa's position. So I guess the ultimate responsibility will sit with me. But it's it's going to still probably remain an irregular situation that we get to charging, because most people will take the opportunity to refine their request. So you get to those steps first. So it'll be a reasonably extraordinary situation, and that'll sit with me, but it'll be a consultative process with other key positions.
And then just one other.
If I can, Councillor Harvey, through you, Madam Chair, just whilst Lagoima's come to council formally at every meeting, the Lagoima's come to the lead team every single week, and I would imagine as we're implementing new policy, that's something that we will have a view on as a leadership team and look at every week. And the principles, I think Mr. Cameron's espoused very well. This is the balance between absolutely, as a public institution, transparency, the access to official information with it, but just simply being a tool that before you get to charging, the opportunity for to clarify, refine scope with the person that's making the request, but in the cases where it does legitimately impose cost, that is a tool that is available to seek appropriate reimbursement of the costs involved. But we will look at this every week in terms of, should you be happy to adopt the policy, how it's actually being implemented, and I would imagine would be something that the governors would be interested in asking the staff, should we adopt the policy about how it's being implemented.
So we've got here that the
sorry,
first
one
hour
more
won't be charged for, and
Yep.
the first 20 pages of photocopying won't be charged for. So it's, if someone comes for a one-off information, they're not going to be charged. If they're coming back and back and back, they clearly will be. That's what the policy's outlined on page 55.
Thank you. And I'm just interested in, do you see or foresee any change in the role of, from a governance perspective, if they haven't been able to get through the information in that channel, that they revert back to governance?
That question.
People are advised, normally with Lagoinas, if they're not satisfied with the process application from council, they have a right of complaint to the Ombudsman's office. So, and that's their jurisdiction to manage situations where people don't feel they're having a fair approach to access to information, and perhaps council's not making best efforts or being fair in its response with people. I think issues tend to arise. We don't necessarily always store the information that people seek or have it in such a way that we can recover it, which can be frustrating for people at times. But I don't see this. I think your question is, will this impose if we're becoming more restrictive in our practices, will this impose a greater load on governance? I can't foresee that in the situation as we understand it at the moment. If we have any extraordinary situations arise, we'll just have to manage our way through it. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, you satisfied the approach? Thank you. All right, do we have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Watkins, seconded Councillor Apatu. Any further questions, comments? I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Proposed amendment to schedule of meetings, calling for another council meeting in 2 weeks. Schedule of meetings, recommendations on page 62. Any questions? Councillor Sholem?
Happy to move, Your Worship.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Dixon. Any questions or comments about this meeting schedule? I'll put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that's carried. Now we move on to items 18 and 19. There are no minor or urgent items. We go into item 20, recommendation to exclude the public for items 21, 22, 23 and 24. I now refer to Mr Cameron or Mr Allen to take us through the public excluded reasons for going into PX.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's 4 items on the agenda, public excluded. All of those items, council's in various stages of negotiation positions on commercial matters. So it's recommended at this stage, papers are heard and public excluded to protect council's negotiation positions. And also in each of those cases, council's in possession of commercially sensitive information of other parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to move from the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Dixon. All those in favour, please say aye, that we move into PX. Aye. Any against? Thank you, that is carried. Thank you to our community who may have joined us today to quite a very significant meeting in our council and some very, very big decision. And I thank councillors for their hard work, and I thank our community for being patient and understanding, and we look forward to hearing from you as we engage and consult with you over the next few weeks. Ko Māori e, tēnā koutou katoa.